Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Sarah Smith, a horticulturist here at Rogers Gardens, and today I'm standing in for the lovely Suzanne Hetrick. You're used to seeing her on Tuesdays and me on Thursdays, but I'm going to fill in for her today. So I'm going to be introducing to you the topic that she had planned, and that's softening up your garden with grasses. I have a lot of different beautiful grassy things here with me. Not all of them are true grasses, but I think grasses are a really great way to add movement and texture and softness to your yard. I think sometimes they get a little overlooked, but I think having all those beautiful textures in a garden is super important, and having that movement in your garden is even more important. So we have gorgeous things like this, like the Pennisetums. They get these beautiful flower seeds on them. They're so pretty, they're so soft, and just the smallest amount of movement creates the whole entire thing to just flow and wave, almost like you're underwater. They're so beautiful. I love this red color. So this is Pennisetum Rubrum, and it's just a beautiful grass. Once you get established, fairly low water needs as well. So this is one of my all-time favorite grasses. Can get fairly big. There's different varieties that'll stay smaller to bigger, but just be aware of the size of these. I think a lot of times people underestimate how big their grass is going to get, and they cram it into a space and it overgrows that space and it just becomes kind of a monster. So really understanding the space that it's going to take up is super important. I also love the variegated grasses. I think they're so pretty, and they really show the texture to them so well when you have those gorgeous white striping in it. This is a type of miscanthus. Absolutely love this grass. Not as much movement as you get in something like a Pennisetum, but the coloration really makes this stand out. This is really great in a backdrop because it really pulls your eye towards it with that variegation. And I wanted to also show you that it doesn't all have to be grasses to get that really kind of beautiful movement. This right here, down here, this is a cordyline. So the cordyline is very soft, kind of looks a little bit like an Australian flax, or phormium people call them, but cordylines are a little bit thinner and have a little bit more of movement and softness to it. Unlike the grasses where you do have to occasionally cut them down, you do not have to do this with a cordyline, sorry. It stays really nice year round, is a little bit more bolder, and sometimes comes in different colors. We have sometimes a pinky striped colored one that's super pretty. There's I think that one's called Pink Electric, but there's a lot of different varieties of that as well. Some of these will get a trunk to them, so you also want to be paying attention to that too. With some of these, they'll get a tall trunk over time, so it's not the same variety as the kind that stays low like this and kind of mimics the grass look. Then there's a lot of little ones, so if you don't have space to put a big giant one and don't have the room to dedicate to something like this, there's a lot of really beautiful pretty grasses that you can bring into the garden too. This one I picked up, this is my new current crush. I love it so much. This is a Lomandra. So pretty. The Lomandra doesn't tend to get as dry as things like the miscanthus and the Pennisetum grasses, but I love the variegation on this. Isn't this beautiful? It tends to be a little bit stiffer, so you see that it doesn't have as much of that flowy kind of movement to it, but that variegation is just so pretty on this grass. Once this gets established, can be fairly drought tolerant as well. That's the nice thing about most of these is they don't require a ton of water. They're not typically very water hungry, but I absolutely love this Lomandra. So pretty, right? Arctic Frost, this one's called. And then, so this one's a Lomandra. Carex is a very common small one that you see. I love the gray carex. This comes in a lot of different colors as well. This one's blue zinger. I use this one a lot. This one's really pretty. Will fill in a whole entire area. Really low water tolerance on this. I love mixing this one with some succulents. If you mix this with agaves, it's really nice because you have that big bold agave leaf and then that fine texture. Especially with some of the little more green agaves, this gray really picks that up and adds a really beautiful contrast. It's one of my favorite pairings. It's just so pretty. And then Cecillaria. So Cecillaria is nice because it gets the little seed heads. Like some of these other grasses. This one's nice because it's really, really compact green color to it. It's really, really lush feeling. It gives you that kind of dry, lush vibe going on. It mixes well with a lot of other plants, but I think with some of the smaller ones, I think they look really pretty when they're paired with a lot of more of their own. So that way you're making a really big statement. I really like that kind of look where you have like a really nice big swash of quite a few plants all together. They look really good paired like that. So there's all different kinds of varieties of grasses. They fit into all different kinds of needs as well. So whether you have a really lush meadow kind of garden, whether you have a tropical garden, even this I think would do really well in a tropical looking garden, whether you have succulents, something very modern. I think modern plantings look really pretty, especially when you grid grasses, really makes kind of a cool impact. And gives you that kind of modern vibe, especially if you're working with really strong lines in your garden bed. You can even amplify that even more by using those grasses in kind of a grid pattern. So there's all different kinds. We even have fescues. There was just way too many for me to pull all the different types that we have here. We have a whole area dedicated to the different types of grasses we have now. It's really, really beautiful. The only thing you really have to worry about with these is if you live in an area where you have a lot of rabbits. Sorry to say, most of these are going to be an issue with the rabbits. The cordyline will probably not be an issue with the rabbits. I doubt they're going to go for that. But with the carex and the Cecillaria, the rabbits do like that grass just as much as we do. So the really only way you can get rid of a rabbit situation is physical barriers, honestly. There's no magic spray. If there was, or if I could make something, I'd probably be a millionaire. But physical barriers to keep them out of your yard is the best way to handle a rabbit situation. So think about that too. So you really want to pay attention to size. Make sure you read all the labels. It will tell you how big they get and kind of what their pattern of growth is. If you're unsure, you can always, of course, ask us and we can give you information so you're picking the right one for your space. And also, once you get them established and you notice some new growth on them once you plant them, you can really cut back on the water. They're not really necessarily water-hungry plants, which is nice. They don't require a ton of fertilizing. When it comes to fertilizer with grasses, you really want to use something that has a lot of nitrogen in it. When you're looking at your NPK, so that's the 3 numbers you see on every box of fertilizer, that first number is your nitrogen number. So you want to make sure that it's not a 0 or a really, really low number. As long as it's something 4 and above, you're going to do really well. Blood meal, we sell just the plain blood meal by itself. That's a great one for grass. All nitrogen. Make sure you don't add too much. You can burn some of your grasses with that. You really just want to make sure you don't pile a ton right in the middle and you don't water it. That's when you're going to cause burn problems. As long as you're spreading it nicely on the ground, not putting too much into the foliage or right into the center of the plant, your plant will absolutely love you for that. So other than that, they're very, very simple. Of course, we are doing this live, so if anybody has any questions about anything, you can always ask those down below. If you came into this late and we're not live any longer, you can always leave your questions there and we'll try our best to get to those questions for you as well. And we have a lot of really fun things coming up. We have our Halloween coming up. That's going to be in the beginning of September. We're going to be even having Christmas coming up in October. So we have a lot of really beautiful things going on here at Rogers Garden. So it's a really, really fun time to come in and see all the new stuff we have going on. We have a hummingbird summer program. That's usually what I'm talking to you about on Thursdays. I'm showing you all the different hummingbird plants that the hummingbirds love. And we have tons of hummingbirds. I'm sure you were hearing them chirping around in the background. Tons of hummingbirds, monarch butterflies everywhere. We're doing the native milkweed exchange. So it's just a great fun time to be here at Rogers. I really do have the best job. So if anybody has any questions, Marissa can let me know. Do we got anything going on?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Sarah. What is the first grass you shared?
So this one right here, the variety on this, let's see if I can find the tag, because there's a couple of different varieties. I think this is just the regular rubrum. Yeah, so it's Pennisetum Rubrum. There are other Pennisetum varieties, some that are green, some that have a little fluffier seed pod to it. They call those little bunnies. They're super cute. There's some more compact varieties. There's even a pink stripy variety that we occasionally get in. This is one of the classic favorites. The color's so pretty. Adding that bronze into any garden really kind of makes everything else pop. It's really kind of cool, and it just is the one that gets really the best movement with all the seed pods on here. It's one that needs to be cut down once a year, so once you don't have any new seed pods, everything's kind of puffed out and it's starting to look really dry. That's when you just want to take the whole thing and just cut it back and let the new growth come out. But it's really beautiful, low water, compare well with other succulents and things like that as well too. So it's such a great one. Any other questions?
Yes, when is the best time of the year to plant the grasses here?
Okay, so we're super lucky here in Southern California. I know we have a lot of people watching in other states, and I hate to brag, but we can truly kind of plant anything year round here. Fall is a really good time to get things established in the garden because we've gotten through the hot part of summer, and then the plants have a chance to set their roots in, go through like a wet winter, and really spring up so beautifully in the springtime. So it's a good time to plant here. We're really lucky in that regard that we can kind of plant anything year round. The only thing you want to really pay attention to is if you're planting on a super hot day, if it's like over 80 degrees, you might want to wait a couple of days for it to cool down. As we know, here in Southern California, we can be 80 and then the next day we're like 70. So one day we were raining this week, which just was absolutely mind-blowing. So really, any time of year, if it's super hot, be careful, give it some extra water, give it some extra babying. Make sure when you are planting something, especially on a hot day, that you're watering that root ball really directly. And also, never plant a dry root ball. If you pull a plant out of a container and it's super dry, do not plant it like that. Give it some water, wait a day, plant it the next day. Putting something super wet into the garden is hard to get that root ball wet again with the surrounding soil. What winds up happening is you go to water that really hard, dense, compact, dry root ball, and you put water there and it rolls off that root ball and into all the surrounding soil, and it has a hard time getting the water into that root ball. So that's really important. On a hot day, you want to make sure that you're watering directly next to the root ball very slowly, so you're penetrating the root ball and not just all the new soil that you've kicked up that's all nice and amended with your good amendments and things. So the short answer, anytime. The longer answer, fall is a great time to get things in. Just wait till it cools down a little bit, and then you can get all these right into the ground.
All right, unrelated to grasses question, what is the best milkweed?
Oh, so we do native milkweed here. We stopped selling any of the tropical milkweeds. I think last year was the first official year where we completely stopped that. Maybe it was the year before that. I can never remember. But the California native milkweed for California is really important. So the variety that you're mostly going to see here is the narrow leaf milkweed. We also sometimes have the broadleafed one as well. I think the flower on the broadleaf one's a little bit prettier than the narrow leaf one. However, and this is just my own personal experience, at home I find that all of my monarchs are going to the narrow leaf and they don't really care about the broadleaf one. Although it's pretty, I love it. I enjoy seeing it in the garden. It has a really rosy, pretty flower to it. They float around it, they land on the flowers, they drink the nectar out of the flowers, but they don't seem to lay their eggs on there. I'm not sure why that is, but they all tend to go just for that narrow-leafed milkweed. It's a really kind of pretty plant. It works really well in that kind of meadowy setting. So if you have like grasses and stuff, would look really pretty planted next to that. It is going to die down into the ground, and that's important. That's why we're planting that one. The tropical one stays up year-round, and it builds up a protozoa on there, which builds up and doesn't ever go away. And that's a problem for all of the caterpillars. And once they make a chrysalis and even come into a full-size caterpillar, they'll still have that on them. So even if they're mating with other ones they have been only on the native, they're passing that around. So, and that's when you'll see that they'll come out of the chrysalis and they'll never fully, they're kind of deformed looking. They never fully develop correctly. Their leaves, or not their leaves, sorry, their wings are a little bit kind of weird and distorted. They typically can't fly. It's almost like they can't unfurl correctly. So that's when you know that that's been an issue. So we're really trying to encourage everybody to get rid of their tropical. We're even offering a free exchange. So if you have a tropical at home, dig that sucker out, bring it here. We'll give you a free one to plant the native one. So if you have friends or neighbors that you know have the tropical, let them know. I've gotten to the point where I actually walk around my neighborhood and leave flyers next to people's gates who I know that they have the tropical milkweed. And it's really kind of cool because I'll come back and I'll, walk my dog past and I've noticed that they've replaced it all, which I think is really, really exciting. So it's a really great program. I'm really, really proud of Rogers for taking the stance to do that and even offering something for free to help kind of motivate people to do that. We have tons. I just noticed we had a lot of new stuff in too. And then we even have some that have been eaten because, of course, the monarchs come. It's so fun to stand there and watch them lay eggs and watch all the little baby ones and people picking up their milkweed and finding that it already has caterpillars on it. So we do have some that have been pretty eaten down that we have drastically discounted for you. So if you want to pick up a free one and get a couple discounted ones, it is going to die down naturally anyways, but it'll flush back really, really nicely. Those caterpillars are hungry and they eat really fast. So I do suggest if you're going to plant some in your yard, about 7. Honestly, if you have a good population, they'll go through it real quickly. So have about 7 plants on hand to keep those little hungry guys totally satisfied. But yes, so it's just all the tropicals that all the natives, that we sell here. No tropicals here. And mostly the narrow leaf ones.
When the milkweed dies down, do you pull it or leave it?
Just leave it. So that's also something that I have to be really cautious of because I do so much gardening. I'm always planting new things. I'm always changing beds around. That's just how the life of a gardener is. So what I do is I put a small stake there. So when it dies down, I remember where the roots are. So I don't accidentally dig it up. I've done that so many times. I've dug up a million dahlias accidentally. I've dug up lots of dormant plants. Same things with like our peonies. So I've started actually just putting a bamboo stake at the base of them. So when it dies down and I see a random bamboo stake in my garden, I think, okay, that's not an empty spot. There's something there. So you don't accidentally dig it up, but absolutely just let it stay there. It will flush back again for you. This is my second go around with my milkweed and it's come back really beautifully and huge, bigger this year than it was even the first year. And the caterpillars are just figuring it out. And man, they're going crazy on some of my milkweed. They've eaten it down to nubs already. So it's kind of amazing to watch how fast they can actually be. They're ferocious little guys.
All right, last question. Should lavender be trimmed back when the flowers are looking dry?
Yes, so lavender's kind of funny plant. I call lavender like a 3-year plant. Some lavenders do a lot better than others here. We are very humid, so they have a hard time sometimes with the humidity. The one that I think does really, really well here is the fern leaf lavender. I find that one's the prettiest and tidiest of all of them. I really love the look of the Spanish lavenders, but I find I get about 3 years out of them and they just get so funky after a while that I just wind up taking them out and redoing them again. The key with lavender is they want really, really well draining soil, but they need a good amount of water. So we tend to think of them as being very drought tolerant. That's true if your soil doesn't drain well because they can absolutely rot out. But to make them ultimately happy, very, very good draining soil and a fairly moderate amount of water, honestly, because it's going to be draining through so fast, you have to keep replenishing that. I find that they're a lot happier that way. Once the flowers are kind of looking bad, you can go through and kind of, especially hard with the Spanish one, that's why I find it's kind of like a 3-year plant. It's hard to go through and deadhead all of that. If it's tall or something like the fern leaf, you can almost just grab all the dead flowers and just cut right above the foliage because you'll see a very distinct line between foliage and flower and then let go and walk away. I think that's nice because it keeps it really tidy, keeps it really nice. But But you can cut off, shear off. Sometimes you can use longer shears, and if you don't want to sit there and trim every single one off, if you're really proactive and you're cutting off the flowers once they start going bad, then it's not such a big task in the end. So I always tell people deadhead. Give yourself at least one day where you walk out, just give yourself an hour or two and go around and deadhead things. It'll make the whole garden tidier, and then it makes your end of the year cleanup so much easier, and you'll absolutely thank yourself, because you're not looking at a whole garden that you have to completely cut back and clean up and do all that, and then now your garden looks kind of sad and raggedy because everything's been super cut back. If you keep doing it throughout the year, it's a lot easier over time, basically. Any new stuff rolling in?
Another milkweed question apparently. Can you plant milkweed in pots?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm going to move some of my milkweed. I thought it was a really great idea to do it between my roses, and I was so proud of myself. And then what I realized is I started getting some aphids and things on my roses, and I wanted to spray them, but I didn't want to spray my milkweed, and that's just not working for me. So I'm realizing, okay, once those go dormant, I'm going to take them out of the ground, the ones around my roses, and put them in containers. If you use a really good draining soil, they'll be really happy. So even a cactus mix is totally fine. Make sure it's in a really full sunny spot. And then I think what I'm going to do is do a couple of big ones in some big pots and put some casters underneath it so I can kind of roll them around. I don't want to move them too far from where they are now, because once the butterflies have figured out where they are, they'll keep coming back to that space year after year after year. So you don't want to roll it all over your yard, because they're going to be confused and they're going to lose where it's at. But having it on rollers, especially when it goes dormant, then you can push it back into a corner where you don't have to worry about having a pot that looks like it's just soil and nothing in it. You can always, of course, plant some nice annuals or something around the bottom of that to at least give it a little bit of interest, or you can just roll it off to the side, let it sit there. It'll get, if it can, some natural rainwater, that would be great, watered every once in a while so it doesn't totally dry out the roots. And then once you start seeing new stuff, you can roll it back into a prominent spot. So I love the idea of putting casters underneath the plants for that. But yeah, absolutely, in a container is great. We have actually a really beautiful container that's full of it, and one day there were so many caterpillars on that one. I think we counted 15. It was kind of amazing. So we have one in a pot so you can see what that looks like. We also have some in the ground in our display garden, so you can see what that looks like as well. So it's really fun. The monarchs are crazy. I know I'm always talking hummingbirds, but the amount of monarchs that we have here is just absolutely mind-blowing. It's so fun. The other really cool thing that we have going on is we have some planted passion vine in kind of a tunnel as you go into the garden rooms. And the Gulf fritillary butterflies are going bonkers over there. I walked through there the other day, and it was like such an Instagram worthy moment, because I had all these beautiful orange Gulf fritillaries like all around me. And I was just kind of standing there going, I hope someone sees this. Does anybody see this? I'm just like standing here, like, it was just amazing. So it's really fun because we got all kinds of different caterpillars and moths and butterflies and hummingbirds and regular birds, and just, the garden is just so alive this year. I don't recall it ever being as full of all the different birds and stuff and animals and things like it is this year. It's just been really fun. Yeah.
What color does tropical milkweed blend?
So it's a whitish pink kind of color, kind of creamy. You get a little bit of blush on it. It's funny because I really do find that some are more white and some are more pink, but they're both the same thing. So I don't know if maybe it's the exposure that I have going on there, but some are a lot more pinky. The broadleaf one's really a pink color. It's super pretty, but like I said, they just don't seem to be interested. I don't know if it's just because I have so much of the native, or maybe it's just my butterflies are weird, but they don't really seem to go for that one, or maybe they just haven't discovered it yet. That could also be the case. But it's not a yellow, so if you have a yellow or a red or an orange, you want to stay away from those colors. You know, if it's those colors, it's absolutely a tropical. So anything in those bright sunny colors is a tropical. So those are the ones that you want to pull out.
Okay, that seems to officially be all the questions.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I know you're used to seeing Suzanne here, but today you get me, and you're also going to get me again on Thursday. We're going to be talking about all the different hummingbird plants that we have here at Rogers Gardens. If you haven't already, sign up for our newsletter. You'll know the dates for Halloween opening. You'll know the dates for Christmas opening. You'll know all the cool promotions and things that we have going on. So you'll be the first one to know about all those fantastic things. We are now doing live in-person seminars too. We just had one this last Saturday about plumeria. It was really, really fun. It was so weird. It was raining a little bit that day, but everybody just sucked it up and came and sat through the rain with us, and it was a really fun group. They're really fun to do the in-persons. You also get a 10% coupon when you come in person. We also still film it for our live stream, so if you can't make it in, you can still watch the live stream of that. We post that to Instagram and to Facebook, so if you're not following us, Instagram and Facebook, make sure you follow us, and definitely go check out that YouTube page. We're always filming really beautiful, amazing content there. You'll see all kinds of fantastic things there as well, so make sure you subscribe to that too. So all right, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys. It's so fun to do this with you all. Be well and be safe, and happy gardening, everybody. Bye.